Hello and welcome to the Red Leaf Card, your home for Canadian soccer news and views. My name is Jacob. Today we'll be talking about the Victoria Highlanders of their financial problem, and also we'll be talking about the commissioner of what he said, and a sneak preview of York United versus Forge FC at their home match, which will be soon. But first, here's your fixtures rundown. In the quarterfinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, so Columbus Crew defeated Tigres in the PKs. Inter Miami lost to Club de Foot Monterrey 5-2 in aggregate. Herediano lost to Pachuca 7-1 in aggregate. New England Revolution lost to Club America 5-2 in aggregate. And now, in Major League Soccer, Toronto FC lost to Charlotte FC 3-2. Club de Foot Montreal won that match 2-1 Montreal to FC Cincinnati. And Vancouver Whitecaps lost to LA Galaxy 1-3. And to talk about this is also a familiar face, Thomas Hewitt from the Canadian Soccer Daily. Nice to having you back.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
A lot of exciting for the new season. It's the sixth season of the Canadian Premier League, and a great matchup for day one, which we've seen a lot of good matches. Forge FC 2-1 Calgary FC, which Forge FC won. Atletico Ottawa defeated York United 2-1. Pacific FC defeated Halifax Wanderers 1-0. And a great match, which was yesterday in Sunday, Vancouver FC defeated Valor FC 4-1. Which was the best matchup out there, you think?
I think that it probably has to go to Forge versus Cavalry. It was most definitely it had all the same kind of traits as the final last year, which was amazing to see. Cavalry go up by a goal, then Forge just storm back the other way, get a couple right in front of the Barton Battalion, which was awesome. Some of the photos of the Borges and Batibanga celebrating were great, but I think it really showed who Forge is in terms of, even without a guy like Tristan Henry, even without a guy like Woobens Bacias, or someone who helped them a lot last year, Manjikar James. They're the same team. They're still solid. They're just as good as last year. A healthy Tristan Borges really helped. He was slotted in midfield, which was very great to see. I think that it's been too long since he had that role, and it's good because it also makes it possible to fit Chouanier into that team at some point. I can't quite remember if he was in the 11 for Forge that day. But yeah, back and forth. Obviously, Cavalry had some great chances too, capitalizing off the set piece with a very nice headed goal by Sergio Camargo. Yeah, that rivalry, it traditionally delivers, and it delivered again. That was a pretty awesome game. But across the board, great stuff. We really kind of saw right off the bat who might be the real deal this season.
Yeah, it was a great matchup. I got to see that match. Even they were giving out the replica medals that Forge FC won for the North Star Cup, and I did love that match. And I was always thinking about which was the most important match for match day one. Everyone always thinking about Atletico Ottawa versus York United because they think it was a super team to watch. But now you're thinking there's another game that would be more into. It's the regular season champs and the North Star Cup champs. And can't just sleep on that match. And if you look at the attendees that went, that match went more. 7,000 fans went to that match. And you look at Atletico Ottawa, there was 4,000 fans that went to it, even despite the weather that was at Ottawa. And and I look at, now you're looking at Atletico Ottawa. We're going to be talking about Atletico Ottawa and York United. What do you think about that match since you went there?
I thought that it was an interesting one, because Atletico, as you say, the super team, a lot of excitement to see them. Obviously, with the amount of ball playing players on this team, and it's something I'm going to keep saying. They did kind of show how they can coexist on that team in the first game, but until they keep doing it, I'm going to keep saying it. With all the amount of ball playing players in that team, with the amount of guys that kind of need the ball to operate to get the best out of them, some people are going to fall out of favor. Some of their players might be a little bit upset that they're not necessarily having the role like they did last year or the year before, whether they were on Ottawa in the past or are just coming in this season. And then out of the blue, York kind of really quieted them a bit. York was very strong in possession. The midfield was actually quite strong. Prem Sumaro was doing really well, kind of locking up Manny Aparicio. He didn't have much of the ball for the first half, and York was playing the long ball out of the back, and it worked really well. Brian Wright was quite impressive, I thought. He was kind of leading the line. He was getting played through over the top by Noah Batney a lot, and Orlando Botello, I think had a better game than his counterpart, his Ridos U23 counterpart, Josue Martinez. I thought Martinez maybe didn't have the effect on the game that Martin Nash was quite looking for, but Botello was pretty effective at left back. He was kind of switching with Max Ferrari, switching the side that they're on. So Botello got some looks trying to defend Matteo Di Brienne and Balou Tabla, but also Chris Twardek on the other side. And I thought he was pretty solid, but when York, when you miss the chances that York had, like early on, it's beautiful sequence. Brian Wright just plays through Max Ferrari, who's in the middle, which is a bit weird, but I do like how fluid the positions are and how one player can kind of just step into one spot and one guy can still still have a role and still do well. Like Max Ferrari just did that there in that couple seconds at striker. He squares it for Austin Ricci, but Ricci he takes the first time and he missed by a considerable amount too, which was definitely not great. But it's the first game of the season, so he gets a little less I don't know how you say it, but he's a little less blame for that maybe. But then some of the other times in the match where he had perfect opportunity to score the ball for Brian Wright and took it himself. Nathan Ingham made a save. That was on they were in alone on goal, the two of them, Ricci and Wright. And overall, I think that is a good connection for York to have. If both of them are able to connect more and, Ricci trust Wright a bit more, then that would be great. And obviously a Batney at the back post in the second half, and he just misses the header like completely, which wasn't great. But Ottawa, flex their muscles, great comeback, spirited comeback. You could tell that as soon as they got that set piece from Ollie Bassett, which resulted in Manny Aparicio's goal after a goal line clearance by Thomas Vincenzini, that they were just on the front foot. They were just oozing with confidence. Chris Twardek said afterward that it's just a really healthy locker room environment, which, one game in, obviously you got to take that with a grain of salt. Anything can change over the season. but it does seem that they're having a lot of fun playing together, and they're all kind of enjoying it.
Yeah, hats to Atletico Ottawa. But when I think about Atletico Ottawa, the biggest signings, they always show Amir Didic, Manny Aparicio, Balu Tabla, all those big name players. But but to Atletico Ottawa fans, are they really underplaying Chris Twardek in this? Oh, like underrated for this team?
Yeah, I think he is going to be a bit of an unsung hero. You can tell he plays with a lot of passion. He attacks the ball and attacks the box like few others did on Ottawa. And the crazy part is he can do it all by himself. You know, he was playing as a right back, but oftentimes it looked as though he was a right winger. And because Abu Sissoko is a bit more of a midfielder, he moves inside a little more, and then Twardek basically is free reign to go all the way and be a right winger. So I do think that Twardek has a lot of versatility. He does leave a bit to be desired on defense, in my opinion. I just think that York Martin Ash did say, they were trying to go down the wings a lot during that match because they saw the weaknesses there. They saw DeBrienne, obviously, great player, especially on defense too. He's just as good on defense as he is on offense. But he does have those offensive instincts. So maybe there's a target. Chris Twardek isn't typically a right back, so they went after that. And if he can just kind of tighten up at the back a little more, I definitely think that he might be the real unsung hero, potentially even the best player in Ottawa this season. He's from the area. He's from Kinburn, and that knee slide on the turf was pretty crazy. So if he keeps that spirit up, I think he definitely is going to be talked about as one of the best players in Ottawa.
Yeah. Now the coast to coast match, Halifax Wanderers and Pacific FC. What do you think about this one? That for their first match.
Well, it's Pacific comes away with all 3 points, but I still think it's a bit of a mixed bag for them because if you score the 1 goal and it's from a penalty, I think you can only kind of take that win, again, take it with a little grain of salt because it was a penalty, obviously, and the way they got that penalty was just kind of playing a long ball for Rion Moore, where I'm not sure if it was a long ball, but it was just a through ball. It just broke Halifax's defense. Dan Nimmick's not able to get there. Julian Dunn has to come in from the left. He makes tackle. It's not timed right, which, again, some rust in the first game of the season. And it correctly called for a penalty. Saloof just smashes it home. But Halifax's backline looked really solid throughout that whole game. There were few threatening chances on Jan Filion in net, and at the other end, Emil Gazdov had to make some pretty nice saves. He was named to the Team of the Week just today in the CPL for good reason. Halifax was really pouring on the pressure, and I'm still not convinced with Pacific. I just still think that they are missing something, and maybe it's because Adnai Jarid and Josh Hurd were both on the bench, which is really weird considering that Josh Hurd is their captain still. There's no evidence to suggest that James Merriman has removed him from the captaincy. Andre Tierkovanu also started on the bench. So when those 3 are put into the team as starters, I think might see a bit of a better Pacific, maybe the real Pacific. I was still impressed by, an Ali Endom. I thought he was quite good. Meir Giguere was really good, actually, at center back. Kind of stopped Christian Valesky or Ryan Telfer shouldering a lot of that defensive work. In midfield, they were pretty good, but Halifax still was able to create chances with relative ease. And I do think that Halifax, with their back 3, a system that Patrice Geiser talks about, he's kind of borrowing from Xabi Alonso at Bayer Leverkusen. I do think that Halifax can do damage, but Pacific, they're going to need to not just string together a few wins now, but in the second half of the season, because that's when they traditionally struggle, to kind of really make me think that they're a serious contender this year.
Yeah, like said it all. Like all these three teams that we've mentioned, Forge FC, Calgary FC, really good matchups. Atletico Ottawa and York United, both of them are doing really well. York United looks like the biggest team to pressure them, and Pacific FC, Halifax Wanderers, balanced team, but try to find what they are. And final one, Vancouver FC and Valor FC. Valor FC starts with the first goal, and the rest of it goes to Vancouver FC scoring 4 goals. What do you think about that match?
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver, I really couldn't praise them enough. I thought that was an amazing showing, and Valor going up, I thought it was understandable. Temi Antonoglu was left with a bit of space and just a world-class cross. I think we can all agree that might be the prettiest goal of the weekend just for the assist alone from Antonoglu, who formerly is of Toronto FC. Vancouver just picked them apart, and although Valor received a red card, which honestly didn't really look like a red card, it was a simulation. And that's always a tricky one. I don't think it really was simulation in this instance. But, either way, at the time, I think they were already down 3-1. The game was pretty much gone. Vancouver, despite I thought that maybe if they could create chances in a couple more ways, I would be a little bit more high on them. But still, 4 goals, you can't complain. It is against Valor. So, that does mean, and it's still opening weekend, obviously. So that does, there's a lot of soccer to be played still. But so far, just so good for Vancouver. That Paris Street goal, amazing. Some of their hometown players, they really look like they're having fun playing soccer, which at the end of the day, if you're having fun playing, that's one of the best paths to wins. So great for Vancouver.
And what was your thoughts on Hercules the Eagle on the opening ceremony?
That might have been my favorite part of opening weekend. I won't lie. They had the Volkswagen tiny car, like delivering the ball in Ottawa, which was epic. I love seeing that. That used to be the best pre-match thing in the CPL. But I think having a literal eagle fly in around the stadium to deliver the coin is way cooler. Callum Irving, personally, I would not do that if I was in Callum Irving's shoes. He's the goalie. He's got precious hands, but no, he went for it with the little glove, and the eagle came, and yeah, that was awesome. And with the tifo too, perfect pre-match stuff for Vancouver. I can only imagine that when Vancouver was down 1-0, they kind of thought of all that. Like we have an eagle. We have like some really passionate fans today. We cannot let this win or let this game escape us.
Yeah, and Valor responded about on social media that, we need to maybe bring in a lion.
Yeah, that might be a bit more difficult considering the conditions in Winnipeg. But if they do, I think of them in higher regard. I've still got them for wooden spoon, but if they bring in a lion, that changes everything for me.
Well, too much for that. And I always think about, hey, York United, you have a raccoon every single time wandering out around the seats. Maybe bring that.
Yeah, I don't know how the raccoon. I'm trying to think of how the raccoon might like deliver a coin, or maybe it like goes through a trash can and finds a coin in there or something. But still, yeah, York's trying to do something with the mascot. I think there has been a bit of a void since Yorkie left / was killed
or retired.
Yeah, he he had enough.
Well, I've heard Adam Jenkins always say, bring in a raccoon as a mascot for the new replacement. I always agree with Adam Jenkins with that. Bring in new design of a mascot and have it as a raccoon.
Exactly. I mean, it's right there. Like, it's right there. If they have a live raccoon in the stadium, I'm sure they can make a fake raccoon. I mean, Ottawa has a dinosaur, which only half makes sense because of like the fan tradition. So, York, it's time. Maybe got to elevate the mascot game there.
Yeah, and if I was bringing, for example, hey, Halifax Wanderers, they for their pre-game ceremony, hey, they have a dog as their mascot, also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking maybe they got to do something with a boat there, but I don't know how you would do that because it's, soccer and not water polo.
Yeah, um, or even Calgary FC for their home match, bring in a horse.
Exactly. That would be a good one. That's a very realistic one too.
Yeah, but Forge FC, kind of fictional.
Yeah, the dragon, I think.
Yeah, so not to go for that since during the time the game was not even starting, Commissioner David, no, Mark Noonan, my bad, not David Flanagan. He's still going for his team in Windsor, but Mark Noonan has made some news about stuff about expansion teams, and he said he's delaying expansion teams on 2025. What's your thoughts on this one? He's also said other things about it. So
Yeah, I mean, to start with the expansion, I think I did think that when he first said it, 2025, especially two teams in 2025, I thought that was a little ambitious. I just thought, considering the patterns that we've seen in, in the struggles to get more teams in the CPL, with infrastructure, I thought 2025 saying that in 2023 is a little it was a little late to say that, I feel. And when I was talking with him, guess what it was? It was infrastructure, which is still the problem. And although, not in the same way you might think, because previously it was, the building hurdles, which still exist. Building soccer specific stadiums is still very difficult in this country because, people still haven't seen, or maybe have seen but don't understand the benefits of a soccer specific stadium, especially in the Canada of today. But that's a whole other conversation. But he's saying that they want the soccer specific stadiums. They're not going to settle for football stadiums with stitched in turf, or stitched in football lines. And if it was a football stadium, they would want them, at like York Lions Stadium, Tim Hortons Fields, IG Fields, or Princess Auto Stadium in Winnipeg, as it's called now, to have the paint, because which is, on one hand, you could say, well, why not? I mean, if there's not too much of a TV audience, then there's nothing to lose. But I still agree with him on this because if you do want to seem professional, you can't be having those football lines on there. It really detracts from the game. And I am glad that he's kind of making that stance and saying it early. Now you bring up David Flanagan and his Windsor proposal. I think it's a very interesting thing to consider. I think Windsor might be a much more realistic city for the league than Quebec City, and people are not going to necessarily like that, just because of the size of the market that Quebec City is. But if you look at Windsor, you have, as you say, David Flanagan, those connections to the league. You have a stadium proposal, and Windsor is much more likely to build a stadium than Quebec City because Windsor doesn't have any other pro sports teams, right? And I know Quebec City doesn't either, but it is still, a bit more of a place that can make money in other ways than sports. And I'm not saying Windsor can't do that. It can if it tried, but I still think that might help, their economy more than what Quebec City can do with all, the Winter Fest and everything they do there. So Windsor, I think, might be one to consider. 2026 expansion still on the table. It would be great time, at the same time as the World Cup, having expansion there in the CPL would be absolutely fantastic. I think it would be the right move. It would definitely be the right move. Just before the World Cup, I think is the most ideal time. Although, he's anticipating a post World Cup boom, but he is still adamant that they're not waiting for 2026. They're not going to wait until Canada has the World Cup in their backyard and finally kind of appreciate soccer on a similar scale as like hockey. But 2025 expansion. It's the way that he said it to me. It does still seem possible, but it's definitely on hold for now, especially compared to last October. There are still around 15, maybe a little less or a little more NDAs that have interest in the league. He told me that a couple left, but also a couple came in, so that's promising in its own right. And you do hope that the league expands sooner rather than later, but for now, it probably is the right decision to not move into football stadiums.
Yeah, and also, like which city is a good market, and I already heard about in Newfoundland and Labrador, the St. John's Growlers,
Mm-hmm.
that they used to have a basketball team. Now they've been news about the hockey team that they're no longer, and those were the owners that were thinking of in the future to have a soccer team in that city.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's died down. Now they've already heard it. There's a team that's gonna be in the Quebec that's gonna have the right for the hockey team, and now you and all the other expansion teams. There's been still Saskatchewan that they were supposed to have one in Saskatoon for a specific stadium. That didn't work. And still, Regina. They could have started in Regina and decided make a specific stadium in Saskatoon after that.
Yeah, and like they had all the renders and everything, and I think the big problem is like let's not get around here. It's difficult to build in Canada anything, let alone a soccer stadium, right? So it's not as so they've got a lot of NDAs who are and they're working with them. They're exploring different potential communities, different owners of clubs, all of that. But it's really about just getting things to move a little faster. People are interested, but the reason why these NDAs are leaving, it's they all see potential for soccer in Canada, but it's so difficult to get something off the ground here, and that's the main problem that the CPL is facing now with potential expansion. It's just once they get it off the ground, it'll probably go relatively quick, but until they're able to do that on a more consistent basis, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be happening.
Yeah, even his goals were to try. First goals were to try to make it in Quebec City, Edmonton. We've already seen Edmonton failed, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's still where does Quebec City get it? There's already been a source that there was two groups that were interested in the Laval University in Quebec
Mm-hmm.
City, and it does question a lot when it's going to be Quebec City, when they're going to when is it going to happen? It it's a, it's going to be a long time at this point. Um, Even like for example, the 8 teams, there's already been struggles of the whole ownership. Like you're seeing Valor FC, they just posted the financial issues that they're always losing $1.2 million every season, and that's a big problem right now for Valor FC. And they've also said that to have the financial balance, they would have to average like 5,000 fans per game.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at now York United with a new ownership, the Pascal brothers, really good ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And it just questions for York United is there going to be a specific stadium for them? And that's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, I think first, maybe before expansion, you've got to make sure that the existing teams in the league are doing fine, that the league is healthy now before, maybe jeopardizing things by adding an expansion team. And, Valor is a place that you might be a bit concerned about if you're Mark Noonan, because at the end of the day, the owners, which are the same owners as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they don't show as much interest in Valor. Case in point being they renovate the turf at Princess Auto Stadium in time for June, which means Valor has to spend the first 2 months of the season on the road while the turf is ready just in time for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers season starting again and the CFL starting again in June. So York getting that, to new owners was a huge victory for the league because it meant that they could focus on other things. York having a team in Toronto is still so essential to the league, and that it was a huge victory for them when they got it. And you hope that not another existing team goes up for sale, but if it does, then you've just got to sort that out before expansion. That has to be the priority, in my opinion. Got to make sure that the teams in the league are healthy before you even think about adding more.
Yeah, and now you're having one team that's thriving, and they're getting a specific stadium, which is going to be at the Wanderers grounds. They're improving, and one team denied that they're actually selling the team, and it was Pacific FC. There was sources that they're just trying to find new ownership, but the owners of Pacific FC denied the claims.
Yeah, Pacific, I thought that was a little strange just because it is a successful team. They have a real platform and fan base on Vancouver Island. If I'm 6'5 Sports and Entertainment, even if I know that I have Vancouver FC also under, the ownership, Pacific still is in probably a better place in terms of just the brand that they've built compared to Vancouver FC, who still have kind of struggled to lock down a place in the, busy Vancouver sports market. Pacific, I can't see them being up for sale soon. The city of Langford wants to keep them, but if I was speculating, seeing that Pacific signed only a 1-year deal to stay in Langford at the Starlight Stadium, even though the city of Langford wanted more, and to the best of everyone's knowledge, still wants Pacific to be there longer. I would, connecting the dots, maybe they're trying to build this permanent stadium for them. And Starlight Stadium is permanent, but maybe they're trying to build a stadium in Victoria, which has always kind of been something that has, been a possibility for them. They are in Vancouver Island after all. Langford it's not far, but it's not too close to Victoria, to the main part of Victoria where most Vancouver Island's population is. So maybe a move there would help them. That's purely speculation, but you have to wonder just with what's happening with Pacific right now in their stadium situation at Starlet Stadium in Langford, that maybe there's something bigger at play here.
Yeah, and you mentioned Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
There's a League 1 BC team that made it to the Canadian Championship and won the regular season for League 1 BC. It's the Victoria Highlanders. Just announced they will not be participating in the Canadian Championship and the next season for League 1 BC.
Yeah, it's an awful loss for Canadian soccer, not least because they made it to the Canadian Championship and it has a kind of an interesting team, bit of a wildcard team, and seeing how TSS Rovers did last year, and it does seem like TSS Rovers will be in the Canadian Championship again. That's just pretty much, I think, they're the favorites to represent League One BC. But it's always sad when these clubs go down, and based on the reporting that's been done by Ben Steiner and other outlets, he says what he says is he's told me, other people have told me too, that this is basically a CSB thing. CSB took control of League 1 BC last year, and that just seems to be the problem in this case. Now, we can't forget League 1 BC is adding another team for this season. Burnaby is the place that it's going to be. So, one step forward, one step back, I guess. Losing the Victoria team is just, it is bad though. They still have a team on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo, but obviously losing Victoria is a big blow. And if it is a CSB problem, you just hope that these things get resolved, because for soccer to be a healthy ecosystem in Canada, the grassroots have to be thriving, and that's there. If teams have to fold or don't have the budget to field teams in League 1 BC, even having the Canadian Championship, which is for those League 1 teams, that's a pretty illustrious thing to have. It is a little bit concerning, but I'm sure we'll find out more details soon enough.
Yeah, and still that Canadian Championship still didn't announce that TSS Rovers was going to be in the Canadian Championship. That's something to also figure out who's going to take that spot for League 1 BC. That, or they're going to just leave that spot and Pacific FC just moves on to the next round.
Yeah, that would be, I think, worst case scenario for me. I think TSS Rovers do have the resources to go. And also, I mean, thinking about storylines, Pacific was the team that knocked them out last year after that incredible win over Valor. So it's that it would be cool to see a rematch between League 1 and CPL, and Pacific kind of only scraped by them last year. I think TSS felt like there might have been a little bit of wrongdoing. So with that history, I think it'd be cool to have a CPL versus League 1 rematch.
Yeah, I did see that the one that TSS Rovers were versing Pacific FC. A lot of questions in that match was, why was it a no goal for TSS Rovers? A lot.
Or there's the thing of
talking
about
on the referees.
Yeah, so maybe it's a chance for TSS to go out and make things right if they are selected to represent League 1 BC, which I would imagine that they would be given their stature and status in Canadian soccer.
Yeah, but also that we hope even the first round of the Canadian Championship, there's going to be Valor FC versus Atletico Ottawa and Simcoe County Rovers versus TFC. TFC is going to be the first time versus a League 1 Canada team.
I think first times that TFC's faced one, because Montreal played Vaughan last year, which I think was the first MLS versus League One game. Vaughan impressed in that match. Now we've got to consider Vaughan. That team basically had a bunch of former CPL guys and briefly MLS guys, like early to mid 2010s MLS guys. So definitely a team that had a lot of more name value than Simcoe County, but Simcoe County is a good team. I mean, you can't sleep on them. Do I think TFC is going to lose them? No, I don't. I think even with the injuries kind of piling up for TFC, they're still the favorites. But Simcoe County is definitely the best of the bunch in League One. They're a pretty advanced team, and they brought back pretty much the same group of guys. Orlandis, Benitez, what's his name? There's Ija Halley is a great player that they have. Then there's Alejandro Portal. That's the only thing of. He's also very good. So, they do have some of League One's best, and, maybe they can put up a fight. I think, keep a clean sheet for 30, 40 minutes, then that would be awesome. Score a goal, and it's definitely a victory, and that'd be huge for League One Canada as a whole.
Yeah, and also a lot of people were questioning about where is Daniel Henry of every single time. And Daniel Henry will be focusing on working with Simcoe County Rovers.
Mm-hmm.
And now another League One Canada team that I think some people might be sleeping on is St. Laurent versus Halifax Wanderers. Halifax Wanderers have struggled against League One Canada teams, but sneaked in to the next match. Last one almost beat Halifax Wanderers was Vaughan Azzurri.
Yeah. CS and Laurent is quite good. They put up some good fights against Forge and Ottawa, and Ligue 1 Quebec is a bit of a mystery. I will be honest. That league could do a better job of publicizing itself a little more, because there's still no way to watch games even on YouTube like the way League 1 Ontario and League 1 BC do it, which sucks. It's too bad, because obviously Saint Laurent has quality if they're able to go toe to toe, even if it isn't preseason. Maybe I'm reading too much in preseason, but if they're able to go kind of toe to toe with they beat Forge, that's quite something. AS Laval last year against Forge in the Canadian Championship were okay, maybe not as good as Saint Laurent could be against Halifax this year. But yeah, you're definitely right. One to watch for the upset watch.
Yeah, also when you're thinking about Atletico Ottawa versus Saint Laurent in the preseason, Saint Laurent scored a quick goal, but Atletico Ottawa just came back scoring more goals in that match. So Saint Laurent looks like a decent team in the Canadian Championship, even including Simcoe County Rovers that York United almost which squeezed in to win that match in the preseason 3-2. If I'm right?
Yeah.
So Simcoe County Rovers is kind of a League One Canada team to watch, and I think there's going to be more, and we've heard 2,000 fans are going to be at that match that Simcoe County Rovers just announced that they sold.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge as an advertiser for League One. I mean, you don't necessarily think of League One having the same fan culture just because it is semi-pro, but Simcoe County is very much a professionally run organization. And also, if Simcoe County, CS Saint Laurent, and TSS Rovers are the League One teams, if it's announced, if those three are the League One representatives, I think it's the strongest crop of League One clubs in the Canadian Championship that there's ever been. And I just think that would be there. I mean, I wouldn't confirm this. I wouldn't die on this hill, but I would think that one of them would win.
Yeah. As noticed, York United versus Forge FC is going to be our next match, and also going to be versing in Tim Hortons Field for the Canadian Championship. We're going to be previewing York United and Forge FC. So we think about this one. As noticed, same scores, but Forge FC wins, but York United lost on their first match. What do you think this matchup will be like?
Well, I mean, it's the derby. It's always fun. Um, I think that well, I mean, it could go one of two ways. Forge could obviously in the late game they were very good against Cavalry, but I do get the sense that Forge has the quality to get on the front foot a little earlier if it's against York. Um, that's one way it could go. But the other way it could go is York gets a couple of the players back. They did have a lot of injuries for the Ottawa. We have to remember that. Juan Cordova should be back. Matthew Baldissimo, there's a chance he could be back. There's, Selanovic, Oswaldo Leon. Leon Selanovic seem to be maybe a bit more of a pressing matter than Cordova and Baldissimo. I don't know for sure, but just based on the types of injuries that they have, might be a bit more consequential. So if they've got some of those injured players back, and if they're able to play the same way they did against Ottawa, just maybe Ricci doing just finishing those chances, then I'll tell you what I think could be a draw, maybe even a win. York hasn't beaten Forge at home in a long time. I think they haven't since like April or May of 2022. So there's been a good 3 games against them at York Lions Stadium since that they could not put it together. And it could go a couple ways. I do like this matchup though, and I do think that York is a little better than losing 2-1 to Ottawa. They definitely deserved points from that game.
Yeah, and it's a home game for their home opener. And do you think that we'll see more fans in this match?
Well, there's always the Forge boost because typically a lot of Forge fans will come up from Hamilton to see the game, which is great. To adds to the atmosphere. York's got like a $35,000 contest, so maybe that bumps up the number a little bit. But I do hope so. It's just best for the league, like for the team and the league to sorry, I'm messing up my words here. For York to have better numbers, it's a lot better for the team and the league. And York has one of the worst home records. It had one of the worst home records last year, one of the best away records last year. That's what got them in the playoffs. So maybe that swings it a little bit. But yeah, we'll have to see. I do hope that there's the numbers are a bit higher this season.
Yeah, and there's going to be a good 9:05 derby at York, and I'm going to be glad to be part alongside with you with the media. Which, RedLeafCard just been announced that they will be part of the press for York United. And that's full time of the RedLeafCard. I'm your host, Jacob, subbing out.